And the New York Times investigates how the Kremlin hacked and then leaked tens of thousands of emails from the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton's campaign chair. The Times says an early fumbling encounter between the DNC and the FBI, quote, meant that the best chance to halt the Russian intrusion was lost. The failure to grasp the scope of the attacks undercut efforts to minimize their impact. And the White House's reluctance to respond forcefully meant that the Russians have not paid a heavy price for their actions.
The article finds that Russian President Vladimir Putin turned, quote, two institutions, the core of American democracy, political campaigns and independent media, to his own ends. CBS this morning asked for a comment overnight from the FBI, the White House, the DNC, the Republican National Committee, and the Trump transition. We did not immediately get a response. New York Times national security correspondent David Sanger co-wrote the article. I'm pleased to have him here. Good morning. And we start with this. You compare this to the Watergate break-in, except it's by a foreign power.
That's the amazing thing. And you go down in the basement of the DNC's headquarters, and there they have, we have it in the photograph that's on the front page, their old file cabinet that was propped open during the Watergate break-in 44 years ago, and next to it a thin little Dell server that's about the size of a laptop.
Incredible.
That the Russians got into and got far more data out of than the Watergate burglars ever did.
And why is it that the world's most technologically savvy nation, we thought, took so long to wake up to the dangers of this?
You know, Charlie, the more we dug into this story, and I have my colleagues Eric Lipton and Scott Shane to thank for really sort of driving into the narrative of this, the more we discovered a tale of complete missed signals, as Alex said before. So the FBI calls the DNC, they get the help desk.
Right.
They get a young cyber security person out from Chicago. He does nothing, basically, for 7 months. During that time period, the FBI doesn't raise the alarm. This is the time period when John Podesta's Gmail is hacked that resulted in all of those emails that we heard, that we saw later on. So there were just a series of people asleep at the wheel, and then you get to the point where the White House was very slow to react and sort of put together an effective deterrence plan.
David, the White House knew about this in June. They didn't say anything publicly till September. How do you grade that response, knowing all the facts?
You know, pretty slow. And if you compare it, Alex, to the Sony hack 2 years ago, which we spent a lot of time talking about here, and Charlie and I have. In that time period, they got it in a few weeks. They got the attribution to North Korea. The president came down in the press room. He accused the North Korean leadership. He imposed some sanctions. After that, he created some sanctions that you can use in cyber cases. They still haven't used them against the Russians, partly for very good reasons. They did not want to appear to be acting in a partisan way on behalf of Hillary Clinton, partly because they were concerned about the escalation ladder, because they thought if they acted before the election, the Russians might come in and actually hack the election system.
I mean, this is just an incredible read and just incredible reporting to all of you, just to read this, to see that this low-key approach, as you call it, by the Russians resulted in this massive breakthrough. The Republican National Committee has said that they were not hacked. What does your reporting suggest?
Our reporting suggests they were, but not in the committee itself. Like most organizations, they take their data and send it off to some vendors. And guess what? U.S. intelligence found Republican data as well. Now, they may be narrowly correct in that it may not have been the servers right in the RNC, but to say that they weren't hacked would be to say that the Office of Personnel Management wasn't.
Was the goal to influence the outcome of the election in favor of Donald Trump? You quote the head of the commander of the U.S. Cyber Command. What did he say, Admiral Rogers?
What he said was there was a very deliberate effort here to influence the election. He did not say on whose behalf. And I think while there are a lot of arguments right now about what the ultimate intent of the Russians was, I think you have to think of this as a rolling intent, that they started to disrupt, and they may have ended up in the last stages when they thought that Mr. Trump was a viable candidate going in his path.
Well, one of the points that has been made is that if, in fact, they did hack the RNC and the DNC as well, they only gave to Wikipedia, the Russians, what they found from the Democrats and not the Republicans.
That's right. WikiLeaks only got the material from the Democrats. we don't know if that's because they were putting their finger on the scale or because what they got out of the Republicans wasn't terribly interesting.
Do we know whether they did anything to have access to the emails on Hillary Clinton's server?
I have never found anybody with any evidence that they got onto Hillary Clinton's server. On the other hand, I would have to say that knowing that they had gotten into the State Department, the White House, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, it seems remarkable to me that they wouldn't have at least tried to get into Hillary Clinton's server.
David, cyber attacks are cheap. They can be executed from afar, and they can wreak incredible havoc. What does the Trump administration need to know about and think about going forward?
Well, they actually turned out something of a cyber plan before the president-elect got elected. But I don't think they understand yet, and I don't think any of us really do, the degree to which this weapon has become the short-of-war weapon of choice, a way to go influence a country without prompting a military response.
Wow. David Sanger.
An incredible piece of journalism.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.